Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. I wanted to talk about another team that, even though I had much higher expectations for them going into this upcoming season in a very similar way to Texas, this team has really outseeded even my expectations, especially when you consider the circumstances and everything that has went down over the last couple weeks for the UCLA Bruins. And Mick Cronin has done a really nice job since he's taken over as the head coach of the Bruins. If you remember last year, UCLA basketball was looking like they were in a tough spot. Steve Alford, that experience was finally over, and even though UCLA is traditionally a college basketball blue blood, it really wasn't looking great for the Bruins when you consider the fact that they had a really tough time finding who their next head coach would be, and it took a lot of time, but eventually they got Mick Cronin, the former head coach of the Cincinnati Bearcats. And one concern that a lot of people, including myself, had for Mick Cronin as the head coach of UCLA was that even though we could all agree Mick Cronin did a great job at Cincinnati, I wasn't necessarily sure if his style would be able to translate well at UCLA. We all know what made Mick Cronin in his years at Cincinnati so good and so successful was the fact that he and his teams really relied on toughness and getting steals and just really beating you up in order to get victories. And it's very hard to recruit those kind of kids at a place like UCLA, which is a very tough place to coach. It's a academic heavy school. Not anyone could get into that program. And Cronin has done a really nice job in a very short amount of time rebuilding this Bruins program and getting the players to buy in to the culture that he's established. Because let's remember that also. A lot of these players on UCLA, as good as they are not Mick Cronin's players. They're Steve Alford's players. When you look at guys like Tiger Campbell and Cody Riley and Jules Bernard and David Singleton and Jalen Hill, all of those guys originally played at UCLA under Steve Alford. But the thing is, it was very clear that when you watch them being coached by Steve Alford, they clearly were not getting the most out of their potential. You didn't see Cody Riley just go off like he did against Arizona State on Thursday. That was one of the better games I've seen him play throughout his UCLA Bruin career. In that game, Cody Riley played really well. He is a guy that we could all agree has been very streaky with his production, not only this season, but really throughout his career. He's had double digits in 6 of UCLA's last 10 games, but he was really impressive against Arizona State. He had 22 points, going 8 of 11 from 2, 6 of 8 from the line, to go with 13 rebounds in the win over Arizona State. And UCLA has been running that big man rotation with Cody Riley and Jalen Hill splitting the minutes, and Hill has not really been as effective since returning from the injury that opened his season, but Cody Riley has really been able to take advantage of the opportunity, and that's something that, to be honest, when I watched the UCLA Bruins under Steve Alford, that wasn't really something we always saw. A player who's getting an opportunity, be ready to step in and produce right away. And when you look at the Bruins, that's exactly what's going on with this team, because the Bruins, part of the reason why I like them so much before the season started was the fact that they were basically running it back. And before the tournament got shut down last year, the Bruins were debatably playing the hottest basketball in the Pac-12 and maybe even some of the hottest basketball in the entire country. They had a 6 or 7 game winning streak as last season was winding down, and they were really, really impressive. And I've spoken a lot about Mick Cronin and the job he's done since he's taken over as the head coach of UCLA on this show. I spoke about it a lot, but I am so impressed with the way in such a short amount of time he's gotten every player on this UCLA team to buy into the culture and the toughness of this UCLA Bruins program. And that was very evident on Saturday night against Arizona and really throughout the last couple games of the UCLA Bruins season. When you look at the Bruins schedule, right, their season started off a little rough. They had a bad road loss to San Diego State, and I totally understand the Aztecs are a very good basketball team, but that game was not even competitive. They lost that game by 15. They then had a triple overtime win against Pepperdine, and I understand Pepperdine is very good for a WCC team. Their head coach is Lorenzo Romar, the former head coach of Washington, so he coached in the Pac-12 before, but let's face facts. When you're UCLA and you're playing at home, it's totally reasonable for your fans to get a little upset about the fact that it took you nearly 3 overtimes to get the win over Pepperdine. They also had an early season loss to Ohio State, so there were some UCLA fans that were, I think, pretty reasonably concerned with the way their team was playing early in the season. But then against Utah, they barely get a victory to open the Pac-12 slate. It was actually their second Pac-12 game, They played Cal early in December. But UCLA plays Utah at home. And Utah isn't a bad team. They have some talent. But the Bruins end up getting the victory. And all of a sudden, it's announced after the game that Chris Smith, who was their leading scorer last year, he was a guy that was very close to declaring for the NBA draft this year. He was one of the guys who announced last second that he actually would be returning to school. And I'm a big fan of Chris Smith's game. If you've watched the Bruins this season, he is their second leading scorer, averaging 12.6 points per game, 6.4 rebounds per game, and 2 assists per game, along with a steal per game. And he was shooting 50% from 3. That's part of his game that I think has really been able to improve throughout his college career in Westwood. And him going down flat out sucks, because not only is it just losing an extra body, but it's also losing your senior leader who meant so much to this UCLA team. And when he announced that he was going to be returning to Westwood over the summer, I remember being at work and seeing that and just saying to myself, okay, that is officially the announcement that puts the UCLA Bruins over the top as a team that could be a top 10, top 15 team in college basketball this season. And early in the season, it didn't necessarily look that way, but I think if you watch the Bruins over the last week or two, you could see that this team is finally starting to take over as what could be the best team in the Pac-12. Now, I totally understand that USC, who we mentioned early in the show, their in-state rival, they've been playing really good basketball. UCLA, I totally understand that they just went on the road and swept the Arizona schools, which is super impressive, but USC did the same thing. So both of the Southern California teams in the Pac-12 are playing really well right now. But I wanted to talk about UCLA because it seems like they're playing, or at least are starting to playing, their best basketball, and the same kind of basketball that made them very successful towards the back end of last season, that team unselfish basketball. They're doing it recently over the last 4 or 5 games without Chris Smith, and that is a great sign going forward to show you that, okay, even though UCLA lost their best player, the culture that Mick Cronin has been able to establish is so good that even with that factor of losing a guy like Chris Smith, UCLA has still been able to win ball games. And the impressive thing is, in each of their games, it's been a different player that's really been able to step up. Against Colorado, a Colorado Buffalo team that most people would consider, I think, along with UCLA, to be the best team in the Pac-12 right now. Colorado just beat up Oregon at home. Well, a couple weeks ago, UCLA beat Colorado 65-62 without Chris Smith. And in that game, all 5 of their starters, Riley, Jacquez, Juzang, Campbell, and Bernard, all scored in double digits. And that really just showed me, even without Chris Smith, the depth that this UCLA Bruin team has. Cody Riley's a really good player. Against Arizona State, as I mentioned, he played great. Against Arizona on the road at McHale Center, Tiger Campbell was phenomenal. And I think Tiger Campbell is one of the most underrated players in college basketball. He is one of the best pure passers in college basketball. Listen to this stat line against Arizona. 32 minutes, 7 of 10 from the field, 22 points, and 2 assists, 2 rebounds. He is a special, special player, and he's just super efficient. When you watch Tiger Campbell play basketball, it just looks so easy when the ball is in his hands. And I think with him leading the way, UCLA could be in a really good spot going forward. Jaime Jacquez is another guy that literally does everything for this UCLA Bruin team at an elite level. He is right now their leading scorer, leading the Bruins at only 12.8 points per game, but he's also averaging 6 rebounds per game, which is third on the team behind only Chris Smith, and he's tied with Jalen Hill. He also is shooting 46% from 3, which is super impressive. And every game when you watch the Bruins, this Jaime Jacquez is a guy that is doing everything well. Jules Bernard, a kid that is a former top 100 recruit. He has been in this UCLA program for a while now. It is his junior year, and throughout his first 2 years, he's always been able to show flashes, but he's never really been able to get a consistent chance as a consistent player, getting consistent minutes. But since Chris Smith has gotten hurt, and even before that, he's been playing some of the best basketball of his career. I watched the Bruins up close in a game early in December against Marquette, and he was really the main reason why they won that game, having 15 points on 5 of 7 from the field. So that just shows me what I already said. UCLA, even with the injury to Chris Smith, has so many different guys that have the ability to take over the game at any time, and that depth is what really scares me about this UCLA Bruin team. When I look at the current Pac-12 standings, I totally understand that Colorado is a team that just beat Oregon. They're a team that has one of the best players in the country in McKinley Wright. But I look at Colorado and say there's no reason why on their best day UCLA can't be able to beat them. Same thing with Oregon. I understand they're super banged up, and once they do get Will Richardson back, they're going to be much healthier, and it sucks they lost in Dante. I wish him the best in his recovery. But I compare UCLA and Oregon right now. The Bruins look like they're the better team to me. I compare UCLA and USC. Those two teams are both playing great basketball right now, and USC is the kind of team where their athleticism could mess you up a little bit, but I trust Mick Cronin over Andy Enfield in that coaching battle. Stanford is another team that a lot of people have been talking about at the top of the Pac-12, and I'll see how they do against better competition. I'll give them credit for beating Oregon State and beating Washington State, but they lost to Oregon in Pac-12 play. They are a very good basketball team. They're sitting at 4-1, but I just need them to see and get that one marquee win until I put Stanford over the top. And with UCLA, man, I think the Bruins are playing just such good basketball in the Pac-12, and Mick Cronin has done a really nice job just establishing the culture of this UCLA Bruins program. He deserves a lot of credit for that, and I think right now, even without Chris Smith, the Bruins are the team to beat in the Pac-12. Jules Bernard, Johnny Juzang, Jaime Jacquez, Cody Riley, Jalen Hill, all of these different role players continue to step up, and behind Tiger Campbell and Jacquez, and even a guy like Jake Kyman who could come off the bench and make threes, Mick Cronin has made it clear to each and every one of their players that each one has a role that they should be able to get ready to execute, and if they do, the Bruins will be successful. The job that Mick Cronin has done since he's gotten to Westwood has been phenomenal. I think it's underrated just how good of a job he's done. It needs to be talked about more, and right now I do believe, yes, even without Chris Smith, the Bruins are the team to beat in the Pac-12.